Te Arawa were horrified last month to discover the government's plans to put a large chunk of the central North Island's volcanic plateau for tender to mining companies interested in exploring for epithermal gold.
Well, Minister of Energy and Resources Simon Bridges is only days away from signing off the tender process after what the Arawa tribes describe as a bulldozed and shoddy consultation. Roihana Nuri investigates.
Te momo e hanga kiriata ana.
Our role was a smaller one, if you like. We were just making lots of sort of spare copies because as the rings were being dropped into the fire and all that sort of thing, they were doing a lot of takes and they needed a lot of different rings. So we just made a whole lot of backups for them.
Tūtaki mai kia Ian Douglas, nōna te toa hoko rei koura, kei te whaitua nui o pōneke.
That's why when you recycle someone's old family wedding rings and create a new piece, you know, you're not losing that energy. The life force is almost travelling with the rings, you know. So it's a pretty powerful thing.
Mai ngā tau whitu te kau a Ian e whakaero ana, e whakaniko ana I te koura noa o te aroa ki ngā momo taonga rei.
New Zealand produces an enormous amount of gold from the mines, both on the west coast and up in the Coromandel. So much gold that, of course, a small country like us can't even absorb that. So we actually export gold and it's a revenue earner for the country.
Kei te karutahi te kāwanatanga o Aotearoa, ki te rapu I te koura, kei ngā whenua puia o te puku o te ika a Māui. Ka heke iho te wai I te whenua, ka pā ki te tokarewa kei te pū o papa, ka whakawhenumi te wai auahi me e te haturawa pēra me te koura. Ka piki ake taua āhuatanga matu, ka kati ki raro toka uku, ki te hanga ia rawa pēra me te koura.
There's 130,000 odd Maori in Australia. Now, thousands of those are working in mining. We have the possibility of getting some of that kind of work over the long term in New Zealand. And so that's really what gets me going about this, and one of the things that I think is a real positive possibility flowing from this sort of thing.
He rahi ake I te 8,000 kiromita a tapawha, ka wātea ki ngā kamupene keri rawa.
I intend actually also to go and talk with local iwi about the process and gauge some of their views, concerns before we make a formal decision on that tender.
As we say, you know, we always...
He oi I takotoria keetia ngā āwangawanga o te arawa ki mua I te aroaro o ngā māngai tari kāwanatanga a te minita.
So whatever transpires here today, hopefully that'll go back to all of our people who later on in life might look at this and say, what happened? Well, it happened today.
I tēnei rā he kaupapa tēnei kua whakakotahi ngā iwi o te arawa. I tērā marama ka ara ake he rōpu mana āwaka, ka tuku tono kia kōrero a kanohi te kāwanatanga ki ngā māngai o ngā iwi o te arawa.
They talk about prospecting and they talk about exploration and getting permits, and all this is about is getting permits. And, you know, and he showed a photo of their little exploration camp and he said it was all tidy and attractive and made out it was like a little picnic.
We all know that companies that are bringing in expertise are bringing in foreign employees, so does that mean for us that our own rangatai are going to benefit from them? And I guess the short answer is probably no.
I think for New Zealanders, we are bound to the land. So the first port of call is the security of the land. We're not against developing the land and having a look at the resources, but there has to be a balance.
Kei te noho whakatūpato mātou I nā rā, I mōra, ko ngā kaupoi, nei I keri I rua. Kia hoki ana tuki, atu tātou ki era o ngā āhutanga, ka whakarake te iwi, ka whakahea atu.
Actually, we have very little control, or now he's saying we have complete control, because now he's saying that as landowners we can say no. So you feel like saying, well, we say no. So, you know, haere atu.
Engari, kei te mōhi o te kotahitanga o te waka o te arawa, ka hore te kāwanatanga mo te haere noa atu.
Mā mātou a te tiro heaka I ena o ngā tono mai a te iwi. Ka tahi ka tūkuna ki te minita nā no te whakamana tētahi Ai, kei heara, hea o na whānui te whenua me kira he tono atu.
Ka mutu tēnei hui hei a pōpora anō ka tīmata te keri haere mo te kaura.
Kao. Nā te me he i tēnei rangi o e rima tau, te kautau pēr, te roanga o enei wahanga.
New Zealand Petroleum and Minerals is part of that.
Ko Sefton Darby te pauwhakahaere āmotu mo te tari kōhinu me ngā rawa o Aotearoa, he pekanga o te manatū pakihi auaha me te mahi.
Across a whole range of metals, minerals, oil and gas, at the moment, our solution appears to be to bring that in through the ports. And so, to me, responsible environmental development is not just about responsible production, but it's also about responsible consumption.
When you argue that, you know, you have a gold filling or you have a gold wedding ring or you have gold in this and gold in that, so what's your argument against mining when you use the product? That is, dare I say, a very simple and frankly a silly comment to make in a meeting like this. We have grown in stature, I would argue, from times when we were just bulldozed over. We won't be bulldozed over anymore.
First of all, my challenge back would be actually, instead of listening to stories about these places, I'd recommend that they actually go to them and actually go and talk to the people who work in those businesses and live in those towns.
Anei tētehi o aua taone, ko waiuta i te tai pautini, mai ngā tau toru te kau ki ngā tau rima te kau, whakahaere he ana tētehi mai na koura ki konei. He rahi ake i te ono te kau tau kua hipa kei ngā rau mano tāra e whakapaua tonu ana i te kāwanatanga ki te whakatika i te paru.
Well, the prohibition mine is a bit of a problem. The levels of arsenic at that site are very high. Both myself and the Ministry for the Environment have given instructions to officials to get on and clean it up as quickly as possible.
What we're doing at the moment is we have an RFP out seeking feedback on who's going to do the work, what the scope of work will be, scoping exactly what the cost is. When that comes in, we'll make decisions about letting the contract for the clean-up and finalising it. So at this point, we're waiting for that information to come back in before we can move to the next stage.
Nā reira, hei āwhia whai wāhi atu ai te manatū tai ao ki ngā whakaritenga maina. Ka noho rānei, hei waka tūroro ki te take o te pari.
What happens with the environmental part of it is that it's either processed under the Resource Management Act or under the new, obviously, the EEZ Act. So under both of those acts, generally the decision maker from environmental perspectives are the local council or the EPA.
Is this part and parcel of what you're wanting to do?
I have talked with some tauranga moana iwi about these issues, but haven't yet talked with all of the affected iwi, and I think in the next week or two that's something that I will be doing.
Engari, te pātai nui he pēhea te whakapono o te iwi whānui ki ngā kupu a te minita mō ngā take pūngao me ngā rawa a Simon Bridges. He moi a whai koura hākawa rānei. Minister for Energy Resources, Simon Bridges, if he was to come into Ngāti Mākino, what would you say to him?
I go back to that word integrity, you know, and it is about proper consultation. And if he's prepared to sit down with Ngāti Mākino in terms of our own whenua, then by all means.
We have a sense that this is a part and parcel of a superior drive for economic wealth and prosperity, and taking our mineral resources and whatever resources we can and develop them economically. We're not against that, but the process you use and the journey you take to get there is extremely important. It is much about the journey than it is about the destination.